Hey, the dinosaurs!
And your husband is John?
Who wants a hug? Dinosaur!
Announcements show up in the pulpit in between services. I'm like, what's this? Oh, another announcement. Good morning. Those of you who got dinosaur hugs, if you missed them, maybe it'll show up later. We'll see. My name is Ian. I'm one of the ministers here. It's great to see you all this morning. Four announcements. How many people have filled out the search committee congregational survey? You are so smart and attractive. I mean, it's amazing. You also can become this smart and attractive. If you fill it out, you can find it on the website. You also can find it after the service on one of the tables. Very easy to just go in there, fill it out. If you don't know, we're in the middle of, or we're starting the search for the next minister. I'm here until June. I know. But we have this time together. But next year, you will have a new minister. And this survey will help figure out what the desires and needs and wants and all the things are for the congregation. So please fill it out so the search committee can have really good information for when they're picking. Adult religious education is beginning. The registration class will go on the website tonight at 6. I have a class coming, which is part of the sermon. So we'll talk about it. But there's also a lot of other things up there, so check it out, and you'll find out we're having our activities fair next week, 25th. And you'll be able to find out more about that. Also, we have decided to move the auction from the Marriott to This Is the Place. I'm moaning, people. It's a great conference center. It's like right up here. So, if you've been to that Heritage Park, that's where the new auction is going to be. It's really lovely, actually. And it's on October 22nd. You can get your auction tickets. I have a couple of, I have a delicious vegan dinner that you all should bid on. Come and hang out with me and my girlfriend. She doesn't know that she's got to be there yet. She just found out. Sorry. She doesn't have to be there, but you guys are nice. She'll want to. Finally, it's actually in between services. So next week, in between services, there is a postcard writing campaign for Planned Parenthood. And you'll find the table right out here. There's somebody who sort of sits at the table and helps you fill it out. It's something that's really important for us. So please come and fill it out. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. Is that Saturday? Saturday is 24th, 9:30 to 11:30. Oh, that's what this means. That's why it's up here. Saturday, come here, 9:30 to 11:30 in Elliott Hall. We're going to have a postcard writing campaign. The things I find out. Are they locked out? Who knows? They're not going to get into heaven if they're not in the room. Pray for them. Okay. Just kidding. No one gets into heaven. I'm just kidding. Okay, are we ready? I'm like, somebody's been like dehydrated in a dinosaur suit. He's like losing his mind up here. What's that? It's the fumes. Yeah, totally. All right, Ian, pull it together and let's get serious. All right, the great prophetess, reading from the great prophetess, Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair. Yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clear, clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. We are going to sing a hymn out of the Teal hymnal. And it is number 1008. Now, a little thing about the Teal hymnal. We are using borrowed copies. These are lent to us from the choir. The congregation doesn't have its own copies. Crazy. At the activities fair next week, you can buy a plate for the price of a copy. And we will buy a copy and put the plate with your name in it. So let's let the choir get their copies back, and let's put these in the pews, because we would love to sing out of this hymnal. So this is like a little, see how great this is? 1008. Let's sing together. Do you need a copy?
do the third verse and then go back to the chorus. There's a little bit of a roadmap. So we go through the 3 verses, then we go back to the chorus, and then you see where it says jump to the coda? Yeah. That means go all the way to page 3 and sing the last little line. So we're going to do the third verse and then the final chorus. Do a good job or we're going to keep doing it. So, verse 3, when we share the silence of a sacred space. So this is the top of page, well, it's mine too. I don't know what yours is. Yeah. All right. Here we go. When we share the silence. That's kind of what it sounded like. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. When we share the silence of a sacred space.
I know. Ruen-chuan.
As I turned the page, the color of the ink changed, and the words on the page were now blotchy, jagged, and uneven. The last leaves of a small 15th century preacher's manual laid open in front of me, its pages of smooth, pale parchment barely reaching the width of my palm. The neat, evenly spaced, and disciplined writing that I was reading only minutes ago seemed to have vanished, leaving behind 2 lines of a sloppy, nervous-looking scrawl. one line in Latin and one line in English kept each other company on an otherwise blank page. Ego sum bonus puer, quem Deus amat. I am a good boy, loved by God. Here, after pages and pages on sins and commandments, on prayers and penitence, a young boy has left labored marks of longing, a desire to be good, to learn well, and to be loved. Although silent and faceless, these marks of longing have intently reverberated across the centuries and met the eyes of hundreds, perhaps thousands of readers since the 15th century. I am a good boy, loved by God. The vital, fundamental eagerness of learning resonated deeply with me because of my work as a scholar and an educator. And as a Unitarian, I also found deep layers of blessing in the intertwined joys of mind and spirit. There was blessing in receiving spiritual love through learning, as well as in handling this delicate book and appreciating it as an artifact made with craft and intense labor. Careful copying by hand, precious pigments for different colors, and parchment painstakingly made. The sheepskin would have been stretched taut for weeks, scraped many times, and polished to produce a fine, smooth writing surface. In the young boy's blotchy, jagged, and nervous-looking writing, there was also a sense of blessing, of learning to write, to master a new skill that enables one to seek, take part in, and belong to a community. 600 years ago, this child was taking his first gingerly steps into a larger world, and his labored marks of longing have survived centuries of change and upheaval. However simple the two lines were, they inclined us to blessing, not so much detached and immaculate, but a joining up of kindred longings, past and present, and an acceptance of the most profound of joys in the simplest of gifts. It was moving to hold communion, to share the page with a young reader, and to partake in his joys from centuries ago. The longing for blessing endures and surprises with how it speaks to our present. In that moment, my heart also quaked when I realized that I shared this child's longing barely days after the senseless mass shooting that killed 19 school children at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. I could not help but to pause and reflect on a startling contrast. How in our present, this nascent yet deep longing for the gifts of learning and blessing was so brutally extinguished, while a similar longing reached out from the pale, smooth parchment, its imprint durable and its spirit intact, as poignant and resonant as ever. I cannot make salient or consoling points about the continuous cycles of grief that we have undergone in this country because of a lack of gun safety. I only know that encounters with the past can cast the present into vivid relief and startle us with the perspectives that they bring forth, at once transcending our time and clearly reflecting back to us the challenges of the present. What we most long for can bring us love and allow us to experience joy. And it can also shock our senses and jolt our minds into seeing the world with refreshed eyes. What matters is that we accept, embrace, and seek all the blessings, insights, and love that longing has in store for us.
Good morning. My name is Rick Langer, and I'm privileged to be on your board this year. My wife, Audrey, and I are new here in Salt Lake. We came here about 5 years ago from Madison, Wisconsin, where we lived for a long time. And in fact, we met at the University of Wisconsin during the LBJ administration, if that orients you in time a little bit. In Madison, we were active members of the First Unitarian Church there, and it was a wonderful church. And like many of you, we came to Unitarianism from a different religion. In my case, I was raised a Lutheran because my grandfather was a Lutheran. But he wasn't just a Lutheran, he was the minister of the big church in Illinois, the Lutheran Church in Illinois. So my father was away at war, and my mother and I lived with him and my grandmother, and it was quite an experience. My grandfather gave me many different things, and probably the two most important at the time were Lutheranism in spades, but a strong spiritual sense, a strong sense of spirituality. And as my spirituality grew, as I aged, my sense of Lutheranism diminished. And those two crossed in 1989 when my wife and I traveled to India for the first time of several trips. We were working with a foundation, a blindness foundation, that treated blindness in India. And these were in villages with some of the poorest of the poor. And they were blind due to cataracts that could be removed and they could see again. Their vision was restored after a 20-minute operation. And many of the people we saw were blind for years. After that experience, I could no longer reconcile Christianity as part of my being. Audrey and I regard the Unitarian Church and its teachings really as a precious gem. It's not perfect, but it's still a gem. And we need to nurture it. We need to nurture this church with our time and our talents and our finances. Not just for us, but for future generations as well. Our youngest grandson, Otis, wanted to come to church with us this morning to see why we were so enthusiastic about coming here on Sunday. And so we were thrilled to bring him. He went to the daycare when he was a little guy. So if you share our values, please consider how you can help steward this church through your time, talents, and finances. Because Audrey and I really want this to be available for him, for Otis, when he gets to be an adult. Thank you all.
Someone came up to me after the first service, and they're like, "You guys clapping here?" I was like, "We do." Feel free, clap more. Feel joy. The offertory will now be taken. If you would, you can put it in the plate. If you want, you can also, these are, the Doxology is on one side, and the QR code is on the other side. It has the order of service, and if you'd like to give digitally. So, thank you very much. The offertory will now be collected. you sing that loud, you're going to have to sing that loud every time, you know. So, you know. So, we're starting out heavy. Starting out with some real divinity school stuff. You ready? I know. H. Richard Niebuhr. I know, you all love this. Younger son of Reinhold. Most famous for his work called Christ and Culture, where he outlines 5 basic structures and responses of Christian communities to the world around them. They are Christ against culture, Christ of culture, Christ above culture, Christ and culture in paradox, and Christ transforming culture. Now, I won't go into the details of each of these, but I bring it up because even though this work is actually quite old, right? It's actually really important that we understand some of this framework. Because the right wing of the Christian movement in the United States for many years existed in the Christ against culture category. That is, it's not that they weren't present, right? But they didn't participate in the political process because they viewed it as unholy, polluted, which it is. They weren't wrong about that. And this is not just true of evangelicals, right? But other groups like Mormons, Mennonites, Amish, they sought to seclude themselves. Their communities existed to fight off the decadent and vulgar outside world. But over the last 50 years, the fundamentalists and the radical right of the Christian movement have emerged from their churches and demanded a political reality. There's been a shift from Christ against culture into Christ transforming culture, and they now seek to impose their views on the nation. To give an example, it took Lindsey Graham less than 3 months to propose a new national abortion ban, disregarding years of Republican rhetoric that access to abortion and contraception was a states' right issue. He and others are seeking to impose their beliefs from a stance of Christ transforming culture. All right, seminary stuff over. Exactly. That's blech. But it's important. What about Unitarian Universalism? As a faith community, staring into the future, we're facing a moment where it's important to ask, what's our purpose? Is it to bring together birds of a feather who might collectively lament the loss of our civil rights and the promise of who we could be as a nation, who the world needs us to be as a nation? There certainly is a need for balm and comfort in times like these. We need a place to come where we don't have to explain ourselves, and this is a good place to do that. It's a good place to come and practice loving one another. But there is also a call for us to be in the world. Historically, using Niebuhr's categories, Unitarian Universalism has fallen into the category of Christ of culture, which Niebuhr interpreted as believing in culture as inherently good. Like, we just believe that there's an inherent goodness to folks, which we still believe. People are good. You're good. They're good. We don't always do good things, but as beings, we're good. And culture is good. However, over these same 50 years, right, as the radical right has been moving out, we've witnessed a strong impulse within Unitarian Universalism to be against culture, rising within our churches. We've seen this dominant idea of Christianity that we reject becoming more popular, and we have tried to seclude ourselves, sequester in the safety of our sanctuaries away from the brokenness that is outside our walls. Yes, we've protested as citizens, we voted as part of our civic duty, but as a faith movement, we have not done much to tell people about who we are. One of the difficulties is that we actually don't really know how to talk about our faith. We've sequestered ourselves for so long that in many respects we've actually lost the ability to talk about what we believe in a coherent way to people outside of our protected space, outside of our sanctuary. And once I was doing an event in a park, and it was the kind of event that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. And a few Unitarian Universalists who were not from my church, but they were from another church, but they loved the energy of my church, and they decided to join us for this event we were having in the park. And we had some games, and we had a singing booth, and, it was super fun. And some people came walking up to us. They were drawn by the spectacle, and they asked one of these UUs who was hanging out with us what we were doing. And he said, oh, this is a church group, and he asked what we were about. And this guy, I kid you not, begins with, well, in 1560s, a theologian named Francis David could not find evidence of the Trinity in the Bible. And you could literally just see in their faces, you could just watch them go, like one, not even a whole sentence, and they were like, okay, I'm out. And, as their eyes glazed over and they went from curious to not at all curious, one of them responded, I don't believe in religion. It does more harm than good. And the UU guy got testy because he hadn't had a chance to explain who we were. And the people walked away angry, and the UU just sulked self-righteously. And I was like, please don't come to any more of our events. I'm just sitting there watching the whole thing like crash. I was like, oh, God. But he failed because he didn't know how to talk about his faith. He'd spent all of his time hanging out with other UUs, hiding away. And he wasn't wrong in the sense that, Francis David is part of our history, but we don't believe in history. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all beings. That's our faith statement, right? History, there's a linear thing of history. We believe you have inherent worth and dignity, that I have it, that the people out there have it. They're not sinners, right? They're beautiful beings that deserve love. That's what we believe. We don't do social justice work because we're on that side of history. We do social justice work because the prison industrial complex is a violation of the sacred. It's a violation of God. Flying powerless people to Massachusetts in order to own the libs, it's not just political bullying. It's a violation of the sacred. It's a violation of our beliefs. What we believe should be part of our culture. We don't believe in a heaven for the righteous. We believe in the immanence of the divine, that it is here right now, intimate with us. God is as close as this breath, and we are all woven together without distinction in the holy. We don't believe that a cleric is needed to interpret what's holy for you. You can interpret the sacredness of your own life with some practice and some discipline, but you can do it, right? Ruen-chuan just did it. Beautiful. You don't need to be a cleric. Now, when someone asks us what we believe, part of the reason we begin our story with Francis David or William Ellery Channing or any of this other blah, 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 historical blah, blah, right, is because the religious right live rent-free in our heads. They do, rent-free. they've positioned the interpretation of culture as a battle between the believers and the non-believers, and we ate it up. They assigned us the non-believer position, and we said, yeah, that's right. It's true. They said a believer means this. This is what a believer means, and we said we don't believe in that, so we're non-believers. But that's preposterous. Preposterous. Their definition of what a believer is wrong. It's wrong. We just assume that it's right, and we just accept that it's right. I actually think that all of you are believers. Just not in the way that they define it. We believe that life is interwoven and interdependent, and there is a larger being, larger than these individual bodies, larger than this construct called Ian, right? Larger than this construct called Colleen, right? We belong to it, just as anything belongs to a healthy ecosystem. We belong to the larger being. We don't believe in a God speaking to us from somewhere above the clouds because it doesn't. It doesn't. But you can feel the currents of the larger being moving through you like a wave. If you attune yourself, if you sensitize yourself, if you listen to the sacred, you can feel it. Of course you can feel it. You're not an individual life unit hermetically sealed away from being. You can feel it because you're interwoven with all of life. This is how I define myself as a believer. I live in awe of this life. Awe washes away my ego and invites me to embrace a profound gratitude for life, to dance with it, to sing with it, to mourn and grieve with it, to love it. Am I a believer by their standards? Correct. No! Do I care? No, I do not care. I don't believe in the Bible. I mean, I believe it exists. And I believe there's some beautiful parts and some really profound parts. There are also some batshit crazy parts. Crazy. It's not the authoritative word of God because there is no authoritative word of God. So am I a believer by their standards? No. Do I care? No, I don't. I'm a believer by our standards. And I'm tired, I'm exhausted of them living rent-free in our heads. It's fine if they want to believe in the Bible, as long as they're not imposing their weird, angry sky god morality on us. You believe it. It's fine. Do you. Just don't do that to us. But they want to. And it's not enough to simply say, I don't believe in that, or I don't believe in that anymore. It's not enough to be defined in the negative. You know, last week I mentioned that early Unitarian movement in Europe that initially called themselves anti-Trinitarian, which is literally the living rent-free, right? Like you're using their term to be like, I'm their term, I'm not that. That's what I call myself. Rent-free. By defining ourselves by their standard of belief, we don't need that. What do you believe? What is your purpose? These are the important questions for us. And I get that it's harder for us, right? We don't have a book. We don't have, sacred scripture outside of Mary Oliver. Which is pretty good. Pretty good scripture. But we don't have a book that you can just turn to because there is no book that can tell you about God. God is an encounter that lives beyond the page. Beyond the page. So the spiritual path seems a little harder because you can't flip to a specific verse to find the answer, to figure out that question of like, oh, well, here it is. This is what I believe. We have to feel the currents and the waves of the interwoven being moving through us to know whether we are living our values. And Jiminy Cricket was onto something. He said, let your conscience be your guide. I guess the way I would add to that is like, when we're really listening, we see that it's not even our individual consciousness, but rather the greater consciousness of being that is guiding us. We are living as this being. Are we living as if we are interwoven? How should we behave if we're interwoven with all of life? These are questions that guide our conscience. But the rent-free voice tells us that if we feel, and that's our guide, that's inauthentic, and that we don't know if that's true or how could we possibly feel God? And this rent-free voice fills us with insecurities that get in the way, and we start to wonder, what if I don't know how to listen? Or how should I trust what I'm feeling? But actually, there's no other way. There's no other way. You cannot read a book to find out what God is or what Buddha nature is. The sutras cannot tell you what Buddha nature is. That's like reading a book to figure out what an orange tastes like. Which doesn't mean you can't know what an orange tastes like. You can. You just have to experience it, right? You put it in your mouth and you forget everything that book told you about what an orange tastes like because it's not correct. Does anyone want to know what God feels like? Does anybody else want to know what God feels like? Come on here. I got you. We got each other.
I know. We do got each other.
All right, let's go this way and 3 times. We were not the only ones hugging. You were all in that hug. That's the interwoven experience. Does anybody else want to feel like what God feels like? Oh,
It's not the same without the dinosaurs too.
He's like, I got one God hug already. I don't need more. All right. Well, it's so funny because this happened in the first service. I thought I wrote this thing. I thought I was going to get more people, but nobody. Everybody's like, nope, that's too much. Oh, yeah, that's a good reason. But also, I think something else is happening. So this was the joke. So pretend somebody raised their hand. Oswaldo, raise your hand. Okay. Great. You should sign up for my RE class. I am going to have an RE class on this. But sign up only if you're ready, because it's going to be a challenge. We are not going to read anything. I mean, I've got this one little piece, but it's by me, so it's all touchy-feely. But what we're going to do is leave the sanctuary, the safety of the sanctuary, And we're going to go out in the world and we're going to embrace the lonely and the spiritually hungry. Everything is going to be about experiencing the preciousness of life. Our planet and our people are in crisis. Our news feeds are filled with problems and heartache and wretchedness and corruption and lies and abuse and devastation. So many of us feel powerless. Our political sphere feels designed to be broken. The wealthy buy everything with no regard for the needs of the many. Our military and our police seem uncontrolled and guided by those who do not see the preciousness of life. But part of the responsibility lies with us because we've misdiagnosed our problems. We feel powerless because we're always looking for someone else to solve them. We want our diplomats or our politicians or our educators to fix these problems, but they seem unable or unwilling. But I believe they're also the wrong tools. We're not dealing with a refugee problem or an income inequality problem or a war problem or an environmental problem. The problems we face are indifference, greed, anger, and isolation, and we cannot negotiate or make a policy to educate our way out of these problems because they are spiritual problems that require a spiritual solution. We will not solve our problems by finding the right diplomats, politicians, or educators because what we need is more lovers. What we need are communities gathered and designed for one purpose, to help you fall hopelessly in love with God. Not their God, not the one living rent-free in our heads, but the interwoven being that you can feel, that you literally just felt. Does this mean that I think Unitarian Universalism is ready to transform the world? No, I don't. In fact, I think Unitarian Universalism is in desperate need of reform, but it can begin here. Yes, true. Most of what represents Unitarian Universalism is stagnant, self-satisfied, isolationist, struggles with authority, is trapped in the past and trapped by religious resentments. Like teenagers, Unitarian Universalist culture seems to know it all and is incredibly thin-skinned. Not your teenagers, other teenagers. Many of our members can recount scores of reasons why the Bible is wrong, but they cannot say anything about their own encounter with the sacred, with God, outside of some mealy tropes and rehearsed elevator speeches, which I wish I never hear again. Please don't tell me about an elevator speech about Unitarian Universalism. I cannot stand it. Because it's situation dependent. You need to feel what's in the moment. There's someone who's coming to you. You need to be able to respond, not with a speech that's rehearsed, but I see you, I witness, I'm here, I love you. I believe the reform of our religious culture begins with a prophetic evangelism. Very often we speak of prophecy, but we mean social justice, but we need a greater definition than this. We know how to protest very well. When I get arrested, I get a raise. Which is great. I love that about my job. But we're not as good as we could be at empathetic witness, at being with people in their spiritual angst and suffering. Because we have not really invested in the spiritual development of our own members that much. Too many feel inadequate and unsure of themselves when it comes to sharing their faith and what it means to them or how the journey into the sacred has transformed their lives. If we cannot share our own journeys, it's impossible to offer that to another person who is lonely, spiritually lonely and isolated, feeling in the grips of greed and fear. We need something that can help us fall hopelessly in love with this planet and its creatures, not intellectually, but spiritually, emotionally. A plan that is more than just studying a book. It involves witness. It involves our bodies. It involves play. I have an extra dinosaur suit if you want to join me. For real. And this morning I hugged you in a dinosaur costume, which was silly and fun. And it did make, coming in a little special. But it wasn't just a prop. It was a sacred encounter. Who knew? If you get the email, you might remember the image that we used to announce the service this week. And it's of me in a pink top hat with a pink lei, sitting in the subway with a sign that reads, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you feel love, may you have purpose. And I would sit in the subway, for those of you who don't know, I used to live in New York. I would sit in the subway in the mornings in that costume because the commute into Manhattan was so full of discomfort, most of it created by our own minds. My hope was that people who would engage with me would use this little meditation as they squeezed into position on the train, and instead of cursing their passengers, they would bless them. Now, we don't really have that same subway system here, but as you're driving on 80 or 15, it works just as well there. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you be safe. It transforms the drive, truly. After a week of doing that in the subway, I came to know several people when they'd say hello, or they'd greet me or thank me. One guy would always give me this high five as he walked past to his sort of favorite spot on the platform, because the joy had become reciprocal. My morning meditation was not explicitly designed to tell people about the congregation I was leading, but it did come out of the culture of that church. Our orientation as a faith community was outward. The orientation was to let people know that we understood their suffering, that life is hard, that there are questions about what it all means, and our purpose as a community was to help them experience a spiritual encounter that could guide their lives. We did all the things, Sunday service, small group ministry, blah, blah. But the most important thing that we did for our members was to provide them with the opportunity to tell the world how sacred it is. How beautiful it is. How beautiful you are. You are so beautiful. Not just those who filled out the survey. They're a little more beautiful. But you are also beautiful. Spiritual insight can come in quiet moments of meditation and prayer, praise, singing, even classes. But lasting transformation comes when you orient your life in such a way that helps another person encounter the sacred. When you take what you have experienced and you go out in the world and you offer it as a gift. It's then that you feel the quality of your spiritual condition and your practice. The radical right is seeking to impose a vision of God on our culture, and we need to push back. But honestly, it's an unfair battle because we are pushing back within parameters that they have defined and control. We know what we believe, but we are trying to tell people about that encounter with the holy rather than creating the encounter with the holy. We are trying to tell them what an orange tastes like instead of offering them the orange. We should push back. We should protest. You should come on Saturday and write all the things for Planned Parenthood. Please do that. But let us also leave the safety of our sanctuary and go out and hug the world. Hug the lonely. Hug the isolated. May we bless the people of this world with the encounter of the interwoven being so they might come to believe that they are part of something beautiful, awe-inspiring, and tender, because you gave them the gift of what it is like to feel God. Amen.
So last week, we learned the first verse. This week, we're going to learn the second verse. And you know what happens if you don't sing. So we'll do it like we did last week, call and response. As I learned no, that was last week, wasn't it? This week, I can make a difference every day if I choose.
I can make a difference every day if I choose.
Whether joy and love will win or lose. Whether joy or love will win or lose. Let's put those two together. I can make a difference every day if I choose. Whether joy and love will win or lose. As close as friends and family or as big as the world. As close as friends and family or as big as the world. This work I will embrace and I will do. This work I will embrace and I will do. Okay, let's do that last part. As close as friends and family or as big as the world, this work I will embrace and I will do. As close as friends and family or as big as the world, this work I will embrace and I will do. Back to the top. I can make a difference every day if I choose. Whether joy and love will win or lose. Let's try that together one more time. I can make a difference every day if I choose. Whether joy and love will win or lose. As close as friends and family or as big as the world. This work I will embrace and I will do. Okay, one more time. Both stanzas together. I can make a difference every day if I choose. Whether joy and love will win or lose. As close as friends and family or as big as the world. This work I will embrace and I will do. Great, let's put it to some music. See if we kept on pitch. I don't think we did.
Source of life, God, my darling, Inspire us to walk out into the world. Hug all of these people and tell them about the good news of their inherent worth and dignity. Nothing is earned. You just are good. Awaken us to that great interwovenness beyond beginning and end, beyond birth and death, where we all rest in the great presence and source. And fill us with grace so we might lay down these voices living rent-free, telling us that we cannot change the world, that we cannot love the world into health. Because we can. And we are called by the great being for all of life.